There speaks to the future that we are going into and the past that we've come from. Kenya has a very good story of having successful progressive elections for the last many years. Unfortunately, we've done this through democratic process. There's a great opportunity that comes and also a challenge that also appears while we do this. The next slide. As we head to the year 2027, there are many things that are happening, and history has told us many things. This sense of uneasiness in our population. We saw what happened in the recent by-elections. We saw the conversations that are going on currently, over the last few years. And we are asking ourselves, as a media house, while we highlight that as content, that is content mirroring our society, so what? This being the challenge, this deepening political polarization, there is heightened toxicity, and also public emotions, weeping, and continuing to progress. And even more different, particularly with the time that we are going into the election season. Misinformation, disinformation, use of the digital space, AI, all that is really disrupting what is going on within that space. What can we do together to make sure that information remains relevant, the truth still coexists, but also we find progress every day in what we do. The opportunity that we have as a media house is also to start telling ourselves, and that's where to explain Mimi Kenya. What is Mimi Kenya? As citizens, we are made by the fabric of ourselves. Each one of us, as individuals, made the country Kenya. And so we are made of Kenya. And that's why we say Mimi Kenya Initiative, where everyone is playing a role just to make sure that there is progress in our country. And the opportunity here is really to stand to unify each other, but also remind us that we are better, stronger together. Next slide. Next slide. The objective of this campaign, which will be running for 18 months, beginning March the 26th, which is in another 4 weeks, runs back to back for about 18 months, is really to consistently create civic awareness and responsible citizenship, deliver informed, ethical, civic engagement amongst our people, primarily the youth, but also cutting across, the audiences that we have, these women, and all the stakeholders, encourage meaningful, issue-based, national and local conversations across communities. And even more importantly, unify Kenyans. While the primary audience, and I've said that, is the youth, we saw what happened with the Gen Zs, thank you. The Gen Z was presenting the others here. There's a lot of power, there's a lot of energy that we really need to harness as a country together for productive conversations. And the opportunity to really ensure that we are more authentic, we are accountable, but we are also ensuring that action and progress is delivered every day. So we'll be having different conversations, and I really wouldn't want to get to the details of this, but just at high level to say we have over 100 community radio stations that will be partnering with us to drive this discussion. At community level, we have had discussions with national government, specifically the Ministry of Interior, national government, to engage the chiefs. How do we get the chiefs involved to have this discussion about Mimi Kenya, responsible citizenship? while this is being amplified at the national level, this also must be happening at community level, so that we find progress. This is what we launched 3 years back, and we had a lot of engagements, over 2,000 different engagements in the year 2022. And this, we did it for about 6 months. This time around, we'd like to run it for about 18 months. Because research tells us there's a lot that we've got to do, and we cannot do it alone as LMG. We can do it better when we are with other media houses. I wouldn't get to the other details of this. Maybe the big question that you may be asking yourselves, why am I presenting this? We are seeking your support. We are seeking a hands of partnership so that we jointly pull together to drive these discussions in our country. The last time we checked, we were presenting to some of the stakeholders. One of the years, 2007, our GDP was growing by 7.3%. Just because of uneasiness of political tension and discomfort around that, soon after the year after, all this tension, our economy went down to negative 1.8. It tells you, what does that do to our people? Jobs are lost, livelihoods are also, source of livelihoods is lost, farmers do not go to their farms, health facilities are strained. All these discomforts rise up in a big way in our society. Why I'm presenting this to us is so that we are asking for a hand of partnership, so that as we go into this discussion, there are different ways, different roles that you can play as for this discussion. Please feel free to engage us. We would like to work together so that we drive this discussion and we get to accelerate what is happening in our country. But even beyond this, we should replicate this and see what we can do in the continent. Having said that, I would like to appreciate, thank you for the opportunity, thank you for the chance of presenting this. My colleagues are here and I will also be here. Please feel free to reach out to us and we can be able to carry this progress together. Many thanks. Thank you very much.
Let's appreciate Mr. Saboti once again. Thank you very, very much. So those who are welcoming remarks from the Chief Commercial Officer of the NMG, that is Mr. James Sugort. Now for some opening remarks, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like for you to please appreciate, clap, welcome everything that's human being, lovely boss, lovely man.
This event marks a significant milestone for us as a nation media group. While we are recognized as East Africa's leading media house, we gather here to demonstrate our commitment to something far greater than just reporting news. Our mission is really to positively influence society, but influence, we have learned, extends beyond the newsroom. It lies in our ability to convene, to create spaces where critical conversations can flourish, and to facilitate the partnerships that drive sustainable change. This Development Roundtable represents our commitment to using our convening power to address one of the most pressing, challenging issues facing our nation today. Over the past decade, Kenya's development landscape has undergone a profound transformation. As we have rightly celebrated the achievement of the middle income, our achievement as a middle income status country, we have also witnessed a fundamental shift in how development work is funded and implemented. Traditional donor funding, which has been the backbone of many of our development initiatives, is declining as global priorities shift and international focus moves to other regions. This reality has been more pronounced over the past year than ever before, particularly following the USAID funding freeze in January 2025. And you saw our documentary speaks to that, a real reality. Our non-government organizations, civil society, which have been the driving force of Kenya's social development agenda, and most of whom are in the room here, now face a new reality. According to data from the NGO Council, 65% of the local NGOs have experienced a significant drop in foreign funding. The NGO Council is now the PPORA. 40% have been forced to scale back on projects, and 30% face imminent closure. I've had the chance of interacting with one friend of mine who works at an NGO dealing with malaria, and they've been forced to close down. And that tells you the kind of impact it's having across the board. Ladies and gentlemen, these numbers represent communities that may lose or already lost vital services. Young people who may miss opportunities for empowerment or have already lost their jobs, and sustainable development goals that may remain unrealized. But within this challenge lies the unprecedented opportunity. The declining dependence on traditional donor funding compels us to innovate, to develop, finance, and operation models that are not only sustainable, but are locally driven and inclusive. The theme for this event, which is reimagining the future of development financing in Kenya, could therefore not be more timely. We must explore and embrace alternative funding pathways. Local philanthropy that taps into Kenya's growing wealth and social consciousness, impact investment that combines financial returns with social good, public-private partnerships that leverage our strengths of different sectors, and blended finance mechanisms that maximize the impact of available resources. So these are the things that we need to be thinking about. We always get news that our pension fund sector, for instance, is at this much, our banking sector is at this much. Very good numbers there. But how come they don't give us back to society in a big way? Philanthropy is really lacking in this country. So we need to challenge these institutional funds to have a mindset change and to ensure that they also do their bit on social good. As we engage in these discussions, we cannot lose sight of the broader picture. The year 2030, our target for achieving the SDG goals is fast approaching. Here's our progress has been hampered by critical funding shortfalls and implementation challenges. This roundtable provides us with an opportunity to identify the barriers and opportunities within our current SDGs funding landscape. We need to look for how we can forge partnerships that can stand the test of time and deliver measurable impact, and co-create an action plan with clear time-bound targets to close the SDG funding gap and the implementation of these goals to be achieved within the remaining 2026-2030 period. At Mission, we reaffirm our commitment to not only continue providing you such platforms, but also to ensure that every aspect of our strategy and operations aligns with the principles of ethical and responsible growth. I'm almost 12 months into this job, and I can tell you it's a very impactful institution, and not only impactful in calling out issues, but impactful in ensuring that the key commitments made in every sector are done. So we're just not going to walk out of here. Whatever commitments we make here, then we follow up to ensure that we implement those. As part of this commitment, SDGs that align with ESG strategy and maturity. As part of this commitment, the SDGs that align with our ESG strategy and mature priorities will be a key imperative. We at Mission are proud members of the UN Global Compact and the Global Network Kenya. So we are going to be intentional as well to see how we can help. There's a also for the Nation Foundation that will continue running, supporting some of these programs. So ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our ambitions today, I want us to challenge each other to not just think as representatives of our individual organizations, but to think ourselves as the architects of Kenya's development future. The decisions we make here, the partnerships we forge, and the commitments we secure will determine whether the next decade becomes a period of stagnation or a period of transformation. So with that, I just wanted to say thank you again for making time to be here. We'll be delighted to hear what you all have to say. We've got very nice roundtables. It's a roundtable. Now in a roundtable, we are all equal. There's no head of the table. We are all members of the table. So look forward to these engagements and wish you all very best. Asante.
Guys, let's give them another round of applause. the round table at the front. Amazing, that worked out way better than I thought. So let's give ourselves a round of applause. We're here for the right reasons. We're definitely here for the right reasons. So at this particular juncture, please allow me to welcome from KPMG, Erastus Minor is an advisory partner. So Erastus Minor is going to take us through our actual, our theme is, which is the reimagining the future of development financing in Kenya. Erastus, how much we came up with? Let's appreciate it.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Representatives of the government, NMT senior leadership, representatives of foreign nations present, ladies and gentlemen, and all protocols observed. My name is Erastus Minor. I'm an advisory partner in KPMG, specifically focusing on the development sector. I know a lot of you know us from the audit, tax work that we do, but we also offer advisory services within the development sector. My comments are brief. It's in relation to the topic for the day about reimagining the future of development finance. And I would like to start with a quote by a gentleman called Vladimir Lenin. And he said, "There are decades where nothing happened, and then there are weeks where decades happen." I'd like to paraphrase this to say, there are decades where nothing happens, and then there are years when decades happen. The reason why we are here is what we witnessed from the speaker who talked about the January declaration by the US government about the cuts in the funding. What followed after that? What has been referred by some people as the contagion in terms of funding cuts. Not just with the US government, which obviously for Kenya is quite significant because we look at the health sector, for instance, they did fund over 50% of the external funding compared to the other funders. But then followed the other funders as well. We've seen SDU as well announce the funding cuts, which are going to be implemented until 2027 to reduce the funding from the highs of like 0.6% of the GNI to 0.3% of the GNI. So in essence then, we have a development sector that is pressed to meet the SDG targets by 2030, but yet facing a significant challenge in terms of funding. Like the I'm also passionate supporter of the SDGs, and so standing here, I would like us to examine what we can do towards realizing and being able to meet the targets of SDGs by 2030 in spite of the challenges that we have. If I may just quote, it's always good for a speaker to quote one stat or two, so I'll quote one or two. So, similar to the presentation that happened at the beginning, a lot of my work equally happens within the health sector, and I've been able to look at the implications of this funding cuts in the health sector. There is a report that was recently released by the Center for Epidemiological Modeling and Analysis of the University of Nairobi on the immediate impact of the external funding withdrawal on the health sector. I would encourage you to look at this report. It was released in December. They say that the external funding to the health sector in Kenya in 2025-2026 is expected to reduce to 54 billion Kenya shillings from a high of 156 billion Kenya shillings in 2024-2025. Of these, the off-budget funding, that's what goes to the NGO world, is going and expected to reduce to 26 billion in 2025-2026 from a high of 87 billion in 2024-2025. As you can imagine then, the impact of this is going to be significant. NGOs exist and do their work to supplement and complement what is being done by the government, be it the national government or the county governments. There is another report, and this is the last one I'll tell you to look at, released by Development recently. The age report, USAID had impacts 1 year later. It was released in February 2026. Again, it looks at the direct implications of these funding cuts across different programs, not just in Africa, but in other geographies as well. And they have very granular analysis of the implication, including the populations which have been affected. For me, in some of my work, I do go to the field, and I do get to see these in real time happening. For instance, without naming names, one of the programs that we look at is in HIV and AIDS. And with the withdrawal in funding, and especially on the PEPFAR funding, which was funding a significant portion of both the commodities and also the human resources for HIV, that has left a significant gap in the funding, as we saw in the video which was projected at the beginning. In Kenya, for instance, the funding for the peer educators and adherence counselors has been affected, meaning that that's going to have an implication on the adherence to treatment for HIV and AIDS, which could have a knock-on effect in terms of the increase in the infections. Equally, the funding for key and vulnerable populations also has been affected due to the withdrawal in funding. And this, of course, again, puts the population at risk of increased infections. These KBPs, as we normally refer them, have been integrated now into the general population, and there is no tracking, specific tracking for them because of the lack of funding for that. Those are some of the implications, that direct implications at the service delivery level that we are observing from these funding cuts. Perhaps maybe those are very visible and immediate when you go to the facility, but they are equally unseen implications of these funding cuts. I want to take a different example, perhaps of a school feeding program. Again, these are some of the programs which have been affected by the funding cuts. And when you stop feeding school kids, do not just affect their ability to attend school, because some of them will drop out as a direct result of the lack of feeding and the nutrition. You also affect the community and the ecosystem that is also dependent on that. And that could be smallholder farmers who are providing the food which then goes into the school feeding programs. For the NGO world, obviously, with the cuts in the program funds has also come with the loss of jobs, disruption of livelihoods. These are people who are also equally supporting people below them. And therefore, there is obviously a multiplier effect beyond the immediately visible implications of the funding cuts. What does that mean? The lesson that I think for the speakers who have come be valuable to is dependency on external funding for these critical programs comes with a risk. So the immediate withdrawal of the funding affects the direct dependence of that. I've talked about the HIV, AIDS programs and how those who are dependent on it, including those who rely on the commodities procured through these external funding, have been affected. But it also affects the livelihoods, the unseen perhaps implications of these funding cuts. And at the higher level, at a more strategic level, it also affects our national sovereignty. To what extent are we able to safeguard the future of our citizens if we are dependent on the external funding and the implications of this? Not that there is no place for external funding, that's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying in terms of self-reliance. And I want to take this opportunity then to introduce my other quote. I have only 2 quotes. So, this again is attributed to Winston Churchill, and it's also been popularized by Graham Emanuel during the 2008 global financial crisis. Never let a good crisis constitutional moments, which call for deeper introspection, deeper thinking, perhaps a significant shift beyond the normal, not just casual changes, but significant changes. I believe we are at that point where we have to remove early development financing and the wider implication of that in terms of our sovereignty. This, for those who follow the AU summit recently, you must have seen the statements coming out of that and how even the heads of state are taking this seriously. So equally, within this space that we are in, we have to take the same stance and look at it as a constitutional moment, a moment where we have to really look, introspect deeply in terms of what is working, what is not working, how can we reclaim sovereignty through self-dependence. So, the challenge, there's a risk, and I've attended a few forums where this topic has been discussed. It's been very topical since these things happened. But there's always a risk to tinker around the edges, to sort of make cosmetic recommendations which really do not match the significance of the moment. So my challenge, and I believe also Mr. Odondo in his comments also challenged us to use this conference to really relook at these systems and what is working and what is not working, and not lose this opportunity to actually make recommendations which will lead to a significant shift in the way development finance is looked at and deployed. I'm excited to see what is coming after these sessions, including looking at the alternative funding mechanism. Obviously, domestic resources and looking inward should be the first priority before we can look outward. And Mr. Odundo did allude to local philanthropy and the giving that is within us. And typically in Kenyans, we have a giving spirit. It's inherent in our being to give. I mean, very many WhatsApp groups have been invited to support causes, and so is everybody in this room. So whenever we are called to do it, to support and stand with our brothers and sisters, we do that. The only question is, and we've seen bigger initiatives, not just those, but like I don't know whether you may remember in 2011, when we experienced droughts in the nation. And Kenyans came together through the initiatives which was called Kenyans for Kenya. And we contributed and supported our brothers and sisters. The only question is, to what extent is this systemic and institutionalized in order to make the impact that is expected to be made? So for those who are thinking about local philanthropy, that's perhaps something to examine. On diaspora remittances, the good thing is Kenya enjoys a top spot in terms of receipt of diaspora remittances, upwards of 5 billion USD every year. Unfortunately, a lot of this goes into household support. Perhaps the impact of this may not be felt significantly. Again, how can we look at this? We're talking about blended finance, where you need capital to de-risk the private sector investment, and some of this be channeled towards this. And I know the government has some initiatives, including the recent diaspora remittances investment strategy 2030, which perhaps is going to look into this. So again, can we deeply examine this as an avenue for sovereignty and promoting internal resources? And then blended finance, and I know it's a catchy, very interesting topic. We deal with this as APMT. But at the same time, to what extent are these blended financing mechanisms are really informed by local architects vis-a-vis piloting them into our ecosystem, real and meaningful contribution by the local architects. I want to leave you with that challenge, and I'm looking forward to very exciting discussions in the next 2 days. Thank you very much.
Advisory partner at KPMG. Let's appreciate him once again. Now, next on stage is Dr. Lexmana Kiptoo. Sorry for butchering your names. Dr. Kiptoo. Yes. So Dr. Kiptoo, please join us. Dr. Kiptoo who's going to give us an overview and update on the industry from a regulator's point of view. A round of applause to join us.
Your Excellency, Ambassador, Chairman Ambassador to Kenya, Sebastian Crow, Mr. James Sokoti, the Chief Commercial Officer, Nation Media Group, private sector actors, development partners, BBO's President, Florence Shukwu, the Executive Director of SDG, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm excited to be here today to have this discussion. It is very, very important for us from the public benefit organizations and I want to commend the National Media Group from the onset for initiating this idea and knocking at the door for us to be able to have this discussion because most of the public benefit organizations which we regulate are actually affected, most of them affected by the funding cuts. And so when they knocked at our door, I was initially skeptical about them because, you know, they come seeking for news. But that is, they came with very good ideas, and I thought it was something that I was going to embrace, and I'm excited for this conversation. And thank you very much. And just to echo what you say, I think this is now what you term as solution journalism, which is very, very important for us. Allow me to say a few, to make a few comments, and then we'll be able to join the discussion. The authority is privileged to join and engage with you at this critical national dialogue on reimagining the future of development financing in Kenya. The Development Roundtable discussion 2026 comes at opportune defining moment for Kenya's development landscape, driven by what we've discussed as shrinking donor funding, shifting priorities, and severe funding cuts. I can authoritatively tell you and inform you that last year, most PBOs scaled down their programs and many people lost their jobs. And so this conference comes in the wake of navigating a transformative new dawn, epitomizing renewal, reform, opportunity, and collective action under the BBO Act and the attendant BBO regulatory framework. Just to mention that up to now, some of you still refer our BBOs as NGOs. But I want to inform all of us that since the enactment and the implementation of the BBO Act of 2013 last year, all our non-governmental organizations are now referred to as public benefit organizations. So we do not have NGOs in our country. And in fact, we are on transition. And by the 13th of May this year, there shall be no registered entity in our country as NGO. So, public non-benefit organizations cut across every possible facet of Kenya's human, socio-political, and economic development, playing a critical role in delivering essential services, humanitarian responses, governance and accountability, social justice advocacy, the health sector, the education sector, environmental conservation, community empowerment, and other sustainable development imperatives. I was telling Sokoti when we were having the roundtable conversation that in his programs that they are rolling out, in all the major sectors, we have PBOs that are playing a very critical role there. So we are very important partners to that effect, and I want to pledge my support and that of the authority as you launch that program. However, donor funding that has historically sustained the BBOs, or you can call them NGOs for now, and CSOs continues to steadily decline, exposing the vulnerability of reliance on external aid. Notably, recent reports reported 25% sector funding drop attributed to the ripple effect of USAID cuts, and global economic strains has forced many organizations to scale down or suspend programs altogether, negatively impacting on PPO's beneficiaries and resulting in massive job losses. And I want to associate myself with the statistics that KPMG gave us. Those are actually real figures, and it depicts the reality on the ground. The evolving development financing context underscores the need for strategic adaptation, resource mobilization, and innovation, enhanced cross-sector partnerships, governance and accountability systems, and, of course, regulatory compliance. This development roundtable thus provides a timely and credible platform to collectively examine financing trends, accelerate conversations on sustainability, resource diversification, aid localization and regulatory adaptation, co-create sustainable, locally driven solutions and innovation, and enhance. I want to echo what the CEO of Nation Media Group talked about, that we can increase our philanthropy and we can be able to examine and increase CSR activities even by other companies. So we should look for inward than outward, as we've been always looking at these things. We at the authority, as I said earlier, are on transition from the NGO regulatory regime to the BBO Act framework, which marks a historical transformative paradigm shift in our operations, governance, and regulation of BBOs. It harmonizes the sector oversight with rights protection, operational autonomy, and self-regulation, anchors strong governance systems and standards that enhances accountability and redefines partnership based on a broader PBO ecosystem actors. I would want to elaborate and stress that point that in Kenya previously, very many people, you could hear people saying, I have my NGO. I want to open my NGO for very many reasons. I would want to inform you that now, that NGO of yours, which you used to call it, is no longer an NGO that belongs to you. It's a public entity. That's why it's a public benefit organization. Are we together? Yeah, it's public. And so, government and the members of the public are obliged to actually question you in terms of the funding that you received actually, the funding that you received after convincing the potential donor that you are going to engage in a public activity in a community with a targeted beneficiary. Are we together? Yeah, because those are the critical components of your proposal to a donor, and I'm happy the ambassador is here, and I know some of you go to them. So, because it's a public entity, then it means you are obliged to account for the funds you received, and you are obliged to report to us how you've used that funding so that we are able to get rid of the previously known as briefcase NGOs. Just to inform you that the authority has made significant progress in spearheading the requisite legal, institutional, and operational alignment and ensuring the envisaged regulatory clarity, operational efficacy, and standard side of the May 13th, 2026 transition deadline. And I'd want to point out that and thank most of the BPOs that we were engaged together in developing the regulations which we subjected to public participation and earlier validation. We are hopeful that this time round the regulations will be coming out in a short while because they are now in Parliament, and it will be able to help smoothly come May 13. Just to point out again here that we shall not require re-registration of BPOs. For already registered BPOs, they will transit automatically. Maybe what we will just do is verification of those details. Ladies and gentlemen, regulation, accountability, and sustainability are inextricably linked. A clear, transparent, and credible regulatory framework enhances donor and investor confidence, reassures private sector partners, and builds public trust. More so, in the prevailing environment which is facing us, funding increasingly follows accountability. Organizations with demonstrable strong governance system, transparency, and impact easily appeal to donor partners. And that cannot be overemphasized because we are going into an era where we will be imploring upon all donors to seek referral and an affirmation from the authority whether a BBO can be eligible for funding. So if you misbehave, if you are not compliant, then we will implore upon the donors not to give you funds. And actually, some donor agencies are already writing inquiry letters from us, whether you are compliant, whether you are of good standing or not. And now that we are even in partnership with the Nation Media Group, we will be imploring upon them not to air your programs if you are not compliant. The BBO Act perfectly fits the bill. It anchors strong BBO governance systems and accountability, laying the foundation for enhancing donor confidence, leveraging on local resource mobilization and philanthropic culture, deepening corporate partnership, and strengthening community ownership of development initiatives. In the new BBO Act, Section 65 provides for BBOs to engage in income-generating activities, provided that all the gains that are accrued from such an IGA is plowed back to the activities of that organization. We need to emphasize on that one. And also, the BBO authority will, in partnership with KRA, will be giving tax exemption recommendation letters to KRA to BBOs that engage in humanitarian activities as in second schedule. And this sets a stage for accelerating public-private partnerships, corporate social investments, and enhancing sustainability. So, in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, as we reimagine the future of development financing in Kenya, I wish to reiterate our collective responsibility in safeguarding sector integrity and credibility while fostering an enabling environment for sustainability and innovation. I reaffirm the authorities' commitment to work with all stakeholders in mitigating the rapidly evolving financing landscape and building resilient partnerships that facilitate a sustainable PBO sector in our country. Thank you very much for listening to me. Pardon my manners for coming back. It was not my making, but the MC has requested that I now invite the ambassador, Sebastian Crow, the chairman ambassador to Kenya, to come and give us insights from the development partners. Let's put our hands together as we welcome His Excellency the ambassador. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kipto, for this warm welcome. I would have preferred probably the welcome by the MC also to get a salary increase, but I'm also happy to be welcomed by you. Dear Geoffrey Odundo and the whole team from Nation Media Group, dear representatives of the government of Kenya, dear experts and representatives of the development community, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like really to thank you for this invitation. I think it's an imminent, important conference at a very, very important point of time with regard to a very, very important subject to all of us as donors, as implementing partners, but also as recipient countries. I'm also very delighted, and I accepted this invitation in the moment I saw it, because we have a long-standing partnership with Nation Media Group, and a bit was said about the role also of Nation Media Group in this region that I can only underline. For us, Nation Media Group, not only Nation Media Group, but especially is one of the key partners. We cooperated in various events in the past. I remember a public viewing party in Eldoret that we did together. That was a big success. But also, from time to time, we have the possibility to invite journalists from Nation Media Group to take part in vocational trainings or study tours in Germany. And I really appreciate this partnership very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I think when I said in the beginning that we are convening at a very, very important point of time, all of us are aware that many, many donor countries, including mine, are making painful cuts to their development cooperation and humanitarian aid budgets, and also have reduced their contributions to international organizations significantly. That's the main trigger for the so-called UN80 process that is reconfiguring the United Nations institutional family. And to be honest, what we have seen in the last 12 months might only be the beginning. It's not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a development that we are facing. In many of our home countries, and now I talk about the countries on the donor side of the equation, solidarity with the people in distant countries has declined. And a me-first mentality has taken hold. And there are plans for greater accountability on how money is spent. And I think this is justified because the economic, the social situation, not only in Kenya, but also in many, many donor countries, is increasingly difficult. So the public money that is available also for distribution is going down. This is the reality. In many European countries, the economy is in crisis and growth is stagnating, and many people are rightly demanding that investments abroad should also benefit their own economy and create jobs at home. By the end of the day, they ask themselves, what is in for us? And the decision to provide development funds is a political one, and future governments may set different priorities. However, I believe that the tone has been set and that the good old days of development cooperation as we know it from the last 30 to 40 years will not return. We are witnessing a real paradigm shift in this whole setting. The first question we have to ask ourselves is, were the good old days really as good as we remember them? How sustainable was this model, both for donors as for recipient countries? And I give you one example from a neighboring country that we are also covering as an embassy, which is Somalia. In Somalia's federal budget, for example, 70% is donor funded. So how sustainable can a system be, can a state be, can a social fabric be that is dependent on outside funding, on outside money? And a lot was said about the health sector in Kenya. And I think the health sector in Kenya is a bit similar because 50, 60, 70% of the health sector funding in Kenya was dependent on foreign funding. So how can we make, and this was said earlier also, this crisis an opportunity, a chance for change, a chance for more sustainability, a change for more self-reliance also? And how can we manage this transition? And President Ruto has on several occasions prioritized self-reliance over foreign assistance, and rightly so. A rejection of purely aid-driven models. In his November 2025 State of the Nation address, President Ruto declared that Kenya's future must be built on its own revenues, which is the critical question of domestic resource mobilization. Kenya's tax to GDP ratio is about 12, 13, maximum 14%. The African average is 18 to 20. The OECD average is 23 to 24. So what's about domestic resource mobilization? Also to finance state functions that are donor-driven and donor-funded so far. Second point President Ruto made was about reduced dependency. He has urged African nations to transition to coordinated, South-led global health architecture to reduce dependence for critical needs like healthcare and pandemic response. And I think this is also a very valid point, and we are in the process of negotiating a pandemic treaty in Geneva right now, and I think this is a very, very important cornerstone of a new global health architecture that learned its lesson also from the corona crisis some years ago. President Ruto was also talking about local solutions, highlighting Kenya's support for initiatives such as the Alliance of African Multilateral Financial Institutions, the African Central Bank, or an African Monetary Fund and an African Investment Bank. So bringing the sovereignty and the agency for development back home, I think. That's the direction. And we very much welcome these approaches, And Germany supports also the implementation and making reality out of these proposals. We are supporting Kenya in reforming its public financial management, the fight against corruption, and combating illicit financial flows. The less public money is misappropriated, the more funds can be invested in economic and social development. Again, it's about domestic resource mobilization. And we know also from our own history in Germany how important regional integration and cooperation are. And Germany has been one of the AU's and EAC's most important partners for many years and has been its largest bilateral donor since its founding. So what financial means also can be generated through a deeper integrated trade in this region of East Africa, but also in Africa. The IMF is concerned, if you compare voting rights and population, every person in the global north is worth 9 people in the global south. And this is why Germany is committed to giving the countries of the global south a stronger voice. And that's why we also support Kenya's and President Ruto's push for a reform of the global financial architecture, which is more the macro framework of development, of the development setting as we have it. But I must also pour a little cold water on the situation and how thick a board do we have to drill if equivalent to 7.8% of Kenya's GDP, 7.8% of Kenya's GDP is lost every year to corruption, undermining growth and the delivery of essential services to its citizens, and also undermining our arguments towards our own taxpayers that we have to mobilize money in Germany, in Europe, in the so-called global north to finance development cooperation. How capable of action is an African Union when 2/3 of the AU's peace fund and 100% of the peace support operations budget come from external sources? So if we talk about African solutions for African problems, it's still not finance. And I know that Kenya is very much behind a reform of the African Union and also a reform of the financial framework, but I think this is something that has to be tackled. So, as I said, we are very much in line with the proposals coming also from Kenya, from President Ruto, with regard to the reform of the general landscape. But there's also one particular point that we are very much agreeing upon. That's the idea of unlocking the power of the private sector. The core of all the German development cooperation activities here on the ground is to promote economic growth and create jobs, especially for women and young people. And we do that very directly by training Kenyan entrepreneurs, leveraging seed capital for Kenyan startups, and by investing heavily in the Kenyan TVET sector. At the same time, we are striving for stronger ties to European markets and German companies, because we think that for endogenous growth in the country, and Geoffrey and the predecessor about the middle income status of Kenya, the wealth production the real wealth production will not come from the public benefit organizations or the NGOs. They benefit, of course, the people that they cater for, but the general level of wealth and prosperity in a country is coming from endogenous growth of the economic and private of entrepreneurship and risk-taking and innovation and digital opportunities. I think this is very much the way you have to go, but also that we have to go together by redirecting some of our funds investment into the private sector. To German companies, and they are very clear in what they need in order to enhance their business activities in Kenya. And we have about 120 German companies in Kenya, and the bilateral trade per year is about $500 million euros. It went up about 15-20% last year, so we are on a good trajectory, but from a very, very low base. So what do companies need to come here to create jobs, to create wealth? It's less bureaucracy, it's greater legal certainty, less corruption, compliance with quality standards. And these are just a few examples and a few keywords that are often mentioned in this context. But it won't be the free forces of the market alone or the private sector that will fix everything. And I think it's also too early to say a definitive goodbye to international development cooperation. That's certainly not the position of the German government. Germany will continue to stand by Kenya's side, as we have rightly done so in the past 63 years. Germany alone has an active portfolio of about 1 billion euros in development cooperation. These are projects that are implemented right now. Some of them started already 6-8 years ago, but the pipeline of implemented development cooperation is about 1 billion. This goes in line with the European Union and its member states. And I would like to stress that the European Union, according to the latest figures, is providing 54% of official development assistance worldwide. 54%, more than half. Only making up 5.5% of the world's population and 14% of world's GDP. So I think we are doing a lot. But I can also tell you that we will ask for more results and that we will program most of this money much more interest-based than we have done before. This is also part of the new reality, I think, of development cooperation that we have to face. So we will continue the development cooperation with this very strong European and German role, not only out of solidarity, but because it is in our own interest. And it is therefore also in our own interest to invest in Kenya's development. Kenya is an economic and political heavyweight, an anchor of stability in a very volatile, fragile region. So it is our interest to promote peace, security, development, prosperity in the region. Together also with Kenya, we are committed to a rules-based multilateral order, for example, in the international climate negotiations. So development cooperation also is an investment in a political partnership, insofar that we are needing Kenya as an important partner in this region to make a difference on the global agenda. And our foreign policy and our bilateral relations as two sovereign countries and our development cooperation are conducted on an equal footing. It's not that the donor comes, dictates where the money is spent, comes with armies of GIZ and KfW in big white Prados, sometimes probably, but our system works differently. Every 2 years, we agree on joint priorities with the Kenyan government, mainly with National Treasury, but also with the line ministries, in government-to-government negotiations. And in the field of development cooperation, currently these include support to energy infrastructure, climate change adaptation, agricultural production, vocational training, and skilled labor migration, among others. And these are areas where both of our governments see value added and where we both contribute also to the supply of global public goods. And that's why I'm also relatively relaxed with regard to the bilateral portfolio between Germany and Kenya, because in the Kenya case, it is very easy for us to explain why an investment in development is an investment also in our own political agenda. every ton of CO2 that is not emitted in Kenya because we invest in Olkaria geothermal green energy production helps not only Kenya, helps not only Germany, but is a good thing for all of us. And more strategically, I think the investment in the energy transition and the green development in Kenya has a strategic value, because if we together, Kenya, Germany and other donors, can prove that economic development on the one hand side and a green energy transition on the other side is possible, that sets a standard also for many, many other countries. So in this sense, it is a strategic political investment also for us in this sector. The same is true for TVET and human resources. And the same is true for agriculture, because increasing the agricultural production in Kenya means more food security, not only for Kenya, but also more export opportunities, means also more food security for the world as such, and not only for Kenya. So it's a global public good that we are trying to support with this bilateral partnership. So over the years, we have fine-tuned our shared projects in a way to ensure that we use our development funding as efficiently as possible and put them to maximum use. And I will try to give you some good and best practices. First, all our development projects are aligned with the Kenyan strategies of economic development, for example, with the BETA program of the current government. We live a holistic and multi-level approach, working with national ministries, county governments, municipalities, and also public interest-based organizations, formerly known as NGOs. We never just provide funds, expertise, or know-how, but always have a strong focus on capacity development for government agencies, but also for technical experts. Second, approximately 75 to 85% of GIZ and KfW employees, this is the technical arm of German cooperation and the financial arm, are Kenyan, many of them in management positions. And as far as our German regulations allow, also we use Kenyan consultants. And through this, besides our strong focus on economic development and job creation, we are investing in people as much as possible. Third, we are pooling and leveraging our funds with others within the EU, but also beyond. We are cooperating with the EU delegation, with Finland, France, South Korea, and through this provide large lots to minimize the administrative burden on both sides. And as far as our German regulations allow, we are using Kenyan tendering and procurement systems. Last but not least, we are reporting to Treasury all of our projects on budget for maximum transparency and reliability. And four, in Germany's role as the co-chair of the Development Partnership Forum, we have had, under the leadership of Deputy President Professor Kindiki, very fruitful discussions about how donor funding can be better absorbed, the so-called absorption capacity, and how donor activities can be better coordinated. And it makes me confident that in addition to the Office of the Deputy President and National Treasury, also the Attorney General plays a very important role in this discussion in order to implement the necessary legal and procedural changes as fast as possible. We are staying on top of these processes, but we need to think more creatively how to unlock additional funds and how to incentivize also new players. And Germany is already doing this by encouraging private sector and with us, like the IKEA Foundation, the Gates Foundation, Stanbic, but also the Equity Bank Foundation here in Kenya, with whom we are implementing a very successful project in Kirinyaga, an irrigation project to increase the productivity of local agriculture. Furthermore, we are using German and European public funds to reduce investment risks and thus mobilize private investments, so-called blended finance that was mentioned earlier. And we support the development of investment-ready projects for leveraging climate and biodiversity financing. And we are supporting the Kenyan government in issuing carbon certificates in order to generate resources also for the green transition. And I believe that all of us, development partners and the Kenyan government, that we all need to pull together to make maximum use of diminishing development finance. So I think the question of this roundtable, reimagining the future of development financing, is not only how to get new sources, but also how to use the money that is available, and this will not grow in volume, can be used more efficiently. And we are in discussion also with the Kenyan government, with other donors about this. And I think there are some criteria for a successful continuation of development cooperation in Kenya, but also much more generally. So when we had asks towards the recipient governments, that would be the following: communicate your preferences faster, more transparently and clearly, so that the donor community also can adapt. We ask the recipient governments to take a stronger coordinating role, particularly with the view to engagement of the so-called new donors. And simplify and accelerate administrative procedures in processing and implementing donor funding, for example, for dispersing funds at the district level. And last but not least, to ensure that these procedures are depoliticized, meaning municipal water utilities must be managed on a purely technical basis. These are only some thoughts to enrich your discussion over the next 2 days. And let me conclude by one remark that might sound a bit provocative, but when I saw the picture with the 5 Kenyan presidents, I realized that I somehow got to know 3 of them, because I was in this country 2001 to 2004. No, actually I had interaction with 4 of them. Because when I came, it was President Moi. Then we had President Kibaki, 2002. And then I came back in 2022, presented my credentials to Uhuru Kenyatta, and then the election of President Ruto. So please allow me to make a more provocative remark at the end. Looking into Kenya's history, I learned that you talk about the first and the second liberation. The first liberation was the liberation from colonialism and the foundation of a sovereign nation state, where Germany has the honor to be the first country worldwide to recognize this independence in '63. The second liberation, as I learned, was the move from one-party state to multi-party democracy, which was the election, or which was in the late 90s, and then the election of 2002. And I think what we will witness now in the next years has the potential to be the third liberation. It will be the liberation from development cooperation and the liberation from outside funding of state functions that should be managed and produced as public goods by the government of Kenya. I wish you all the best for this third liberation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Let's put our hands together for him again. And I think that's a good provocation. Yeah. And that's why today we are here as government to collaborate together with the private sector, the Nation Media Group, and the public benefits organizations, and all of us,
because I believe this country is for us. And just to associate myself with the coming program of the National Media Group, that mimi ni Mkenya. The government of Kenya, led by His Excellency President Dr. William Samoei Ruto, made a promise to Kenyans when he was campaigning and said the BBO Act that had been abeyance for more than a decade was going to be a reality, and he directed that we implement the BBO Act to the latter, and that's what we are doing. And the BBO Act is creating an enabling environment where we are going to have a discussion for our country. All of us have a role to play. Without much ado, the BBORA is a semi-autonomous government agency within the government sector. We call ourselves a saga. That's why we've got a CEO. But we are under the Ministry of Internal and National Administration. And our principal secretary would have loved to be here today, but he sent to us a very senior officer, and within government, she is actually ideally the deputy of our principal secretary. And so, help me in welcoming Madam Beverly Obora, who is our principal administrative secretary, to come and give us a keynote address from our peers. Let's applaud her until she comes here, until she reaches here. Thank you. Welcome, madam.
Thank you. A round of applause for our DG, Dr. Kipto. And to Ambassador Growth, we love the provocation, and hot on the heels of what he has said, we welcome the provocation. And as a Kenyan who is very optimistic, I think our fourth liberation, when we become a first world state, we shall now be donors to other countries. Your Excellency, Ambassador Sebastian Groth, the Ambassador of Germany to Kenya, and members of other diplomatic corps, Dr. Laxmana Kipto, who is our Director General, Public Benefit Organizations Regulatory Authority within the Ministry of Interior and National Administration, our dear brother Geoffrey Odundo, CEO, Nation Media Group, and the entire National Media Group fraternity. And I hope the M still secures her promotion, despite over-delegating her responsibility to Dr. Kipto. Our brothers and sisters within the private benefit space, representatives of the PIBORA sector, public benefit organization sector, our private sector actors present here today, resource mobilization professionals, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Beverly Opora. As you have been told, I am the Principal Administrative Secretary within the Ministry of Interior and National Administration, having ably been asked and tasked by my Principal Secretary, Dr. Raymond Omolo, to represent him here as he's hosting the head of state in a ministerial event in Ruiru at the passing out of recruits at the Kenya Prisons College. And therefore, I bring his warm greetings and regards to you all. Secondly, allow me, before I give his remarks, to thank most sincerely the public benefit organizations in the House. As a Kenyan, and as a civil servant with over 25 years of experience, in my tour of duty, where we have a government footprint, there has always been a PBO footprint in all sectors. As government, we don't take this for granted. And as a ministry, as my brother Dr. Kipto has said, we are assuring you that we shall sustain a conducive environment for you to be able to operate despite the current circumstances. And also on behalf of my principal secretary, allow me to thank the PBOs for your support and cooperation. Hot on the heels, the most recent participation in validating the regulations. We look forward to continued partnerships. Therefore, allow me to deliver the speech by Dr. Raymond Omolo, Principal Secretary in the State Department for Internal Security and National Administration, during the official opening of the Development Roundtable at this hotel today, the 26th day of February in the year 2026. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to join you this morning in this Development Roundtable, in which we engage in an important national conversation about the future of development and NGO funding in Kenya, which has been alluded to by the previous speakers. I wish to thank the PBO sector regulator, that is our Public Benefit Organizations Regulatory Authority, and the Nation Media Group led by CEO Odundo for organizing this roundtable for various actors to share ideas and learn from our experiences, while also proposing solutions that will go along in creating not only an impact, but build our resilience and promote sustainability. I note that this is a pioneer initiative between the PBO sector regulator and the Nation Media Group, which is a premier media house in the region that has taken its rightful place to provide a platform for engagement and exchange of ideas for the good of the country. I therefore encourage that we move this agenda forward and even consider bringing other players within the country and within the region. At this juncture, I also wish to recognize our development partners, particularly the German Embassy and the European Union, for their invaluable contribution to our development agenda, and therefore state to them that they hold a very special place in our country's development agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, the discussions we are having today could not have come at a better time, as we are doing so on the eve of the World NGO Day, which shall be globally observed tomorrow on the February 27th, that is also observed every year. And it recognizes and celebrates and honors the work of non-governmental organizations or public benefit organizations in advancing humanitarian action, development, human rights, and community resilience. And therefore, happy PBO Day in advance. We are discussing today funding, and it's a time when our country's development ecosystem is indeed undergoing significant transformation. We are at a point where traditional donor funding streams that have over the years supported PBOs are steadily decreasing. And it has been well outlined by the representative from KPMG. We are discussing, coupled with this dynamism that has defined global development priorities and the shifts that come with it, it has become necessary and imperative to chart the way forward in regard to progress in our country and beyond, and especially on a matter that is very crucial for PBO funding. As alluded to, we all agree that the development landscape and the state of PBO funding has drastically changed over the years, and I'm of the view that there is need, therefore, to redefine our funding models for increased efficiency, improved efficacy and impact, as well as enhanced sustainability for our interventions. Ladies and gentlemen, resource mobilizers should now consider paying more attention to domestic solutions and innovations while adapting to the demands of the international stage, such as enhanced accountability and transparency, sustainability, and other funding conditions. And the presentation by His Excellency, the Ambassador for Germany, has greatly spoken to this. Secondly, PBOs, for example, could mobilize factors of production at their disposal to generate income, support charitable objectives for which they are registered. The PBO Act that is in place has therefore provided the legal framework for organizations to implement income-generating programs and support the social enterprise model that is popular among charities in the West. Ladies and gentlemen, partnerships with governments, the private sector, and consortium approach to development among the PBO sector players are now major imperatives. In our circumstances, we have kept the pace. We have seen growing collaboration between the government and PBOs in various sectors, which include education, health, water, youth skills development, and support for the refugee community. Indeed, His Excellency the President directed the implementation of the PBO Act 2013 in recognition of the significance placed that government and civil society organization collaboration occupies in the development space. Ladies and gentlemen, we've also witnessed increased symbiotic engagement with the private sector to support development through their social corporate responsibility initiatives. Both the charitable and private sector engage in goods and services that serve the same populace. They complement one another, and therefore their partnership ultimately catalyzes our economy. Perhaps what should be as the soul of development today is the consortium approach, where many actors coalesce to deliver on certain projects. Besides leveraging on the competitive advantages of various partners, they could pool resources to support huge program implementation, targeting a significant population. In addition, getting funding is much easier as a consortium because funding partners are assured that aspects of the program are addressed with many actors on board. This consortium approach could rope in the private sector to fill in the critical components of the program cycle. As an example, the sector could be key players at the program design stage by providing consultancy in need identification and prioritization. Private security actors could also provide auditing services, especially in huge and complex development projects. Ladies and gentlemen, I am of the view that business process outsourcing is another area of the development sector. PBOs may outsource certain services to other PBOs or even the private sector so that they can concentrate in pursuing their core objectives and reduce expenditure on non-core human resources. As an example, the PBO supporting relief of poverty programs can outsource cash transfer services to mainstream banks or another charitable institution with superior systems. These partnerships come with extra benefits. It will not only ensure efficiency in the management of PBO affairs, but equally shield organizations from the risk of being abused for money laundering or terrorism finance. Ladies and gentlemen, working with banks that employ strict funds transfer protocols, monies through formal financial systems. And therefore, by doing so, the PBOs will maintain integrity, improve donor confidence, and ensure that they operate within the laws of the land and ultimately be accountable organizations. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to underscore the importance of these discussions, the imperative of translating the resolutions of this meeting into actionable policy interventions, and also widening participation platform for many more players to contribute ideas. Once again, I wish to thank our authority, PIBORA, and the National Media Group for convening the roundtable discussions while assuring all of us of the continued support and cooperation from the State Department of Internal Security and National Administration. I therefore wish you fruitful discussions during this very significant engagement. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I, Beverly Opora, Principal Administrative Secretary in the State Department of Internal Security and National Administration, on behalf of Dr. Raymond, the Principal Secretary, now wish to the Development Roundtable officially opened. God bless you. God bless you. God bless the work of your hands. God bless the beautiful nation of Kenya, because we have embarked on the journey to be a first-class country in this world. Thank you.
I'd like for us to appreciate her one more time, kindly. Thank you so much. So as you've heard, the Development Roundtable, the inaugural Development Roundtable is officially open. A round of applause for each and every one of us. And just to give more appreciation, which is impressive, I must say, the room is our panel discussion by my very able colleague, our health journalist, Winnie, standing over there in green. But before we get to Winnie, we want to prepare the set for her. And as we prepare the set, I suggest that we quickly just get, yeah? If you need to go to the washroom, do a quick one, we settle back in 5 minutes. Is that possible? Yeah? Yeah, fantastic. So we are good. 5 minutes, cup of tea, washroom, we settle down. Thank you.